All right, today we're going to dive into a research paper that, honestly, gives us a much-needed blueprint for a huge decision that so many companies get wrong: choosing the right robotic process automation tool. You can think of RPA as a digital workforce, right? Bots that automate all those repetitive tasks. But the real question is, how do you hire the right digital employee? Well, let's get into it.
It really all kicks off with this simple but really powerful question. Organizations everywhere are jumping on the RPA train to boost their productivity. But the research we're looking at today shows a massive flaw in how they're doing it. A lot of them, well, they're basically hiring the wrong digital employees for the job.
And this analogy from the paper? It's just perfect. Imagine hiring a key executive without even glancing at their resume. That's what companies are doing. They're picking these incredibly important tools based on a vendor's big name or just because their competitor's using it, not based on a real hard look at what they actually need. And that leads to these super costly mistakes in automation projects that just fizzle out.
And that's what sets the stage for what the paper calls the automation gamble. It's this high-stakes game that companies are playing when they just pick these tools without any kind of solid framework to guide them. So why do these promising automation projects go bad? Well, it really boils down to a huge mismatch between what a tool can do and what a company actually needs it to do. Decisions are being made based on hype, not evidence. The paper calls it a lack of theoretical grounds, which is a fancy way of saying companies are just guessing. And that kind of guesswork can seriously hurt their chances of success down the road.
So, how do we fix this mess? That is exactly where this research comes in. The authors didn't just point out the problem. They went on a mission, a quest if you will, to find a reliable, evidence-based set of rules to solve it.
And they were incredibly thorough about it too. This wasn't just some opinion piece. First, they dug deep into the technical docs from the big RPA players. Then, they sat down and interviewed 7 seasoned RPA experts to get that real-world flavor. And finally, to make sure they were on the right track, they surveyed 50 people who are actually doing this stuff day in and day out. That 3-step process is what gives their final framework so much weight.
So, what did all that hard work lead to? A really powerful discovery. Which brings us to Section 3, the 4 pillars of evaluation. This is the absolute core of the paper and the framework that can help any company make a much smarter choice.
What they came up with is this fantastic framework that's built on 4 absolutely critical pillars or domains. You can think of these as the 4 main categories you have to evaluate before you sink a dime into any RPA tool. Okay, first up is customer experience, or CX. But, and this is a key point, we're not talking about your company's end customer here. This is all about the experience of the developers, the people who actually have to use the tool to build and manage the automations. Is the tool easy to use? Is the interface intuitive? And what happens when they get stuck? Is the help and support any good? It's simple. A happy, empowered developer is going to build better bots, and they're going to do it faster.
Pillar number 2 is implementation. Now we're getting into the real nuts and bolts. How good is the actual development environment? Does it have strong tools for testing and debugging your code? Can you design complicated workflows without pulling your hair out? This is all about the core technical stuff you need to build automations that are reliable and can scale up without breaking. Look, a bot is pretty useless if it can't talk to your other systems. So the third pillar is delivery. This one asks the tough questions. How well does this tool play with big enterprise software like SAP or Oracle? Can you deploy it on the cloud, on-premise, or both? And does it have smart features to give you analytics and insights? This is where the rubber really meets the road, where automation starts delivering true business value. And the final pillar, but definitely not the least, is governance, risk, and compliance, or GRC. In today's world, this is just non-negotiable. Is the tool secure? Can it handle sensitive customer data? Does it help you stay compliant with rules like GDPR? And super important, can you see exactly what your bots are doing with a clear audit trail? This is the pillar that keeps you out of trouble and protects your company.
Okay, so let's pull it all together. Here's the entire framework in a nutshell. You've got the 4 big domains on the left: CX, implementation, delivery, and GRC. And on the right, you see the 12 core criteria that fall under them. This table right here is basically your high-level checklist for looking at any RPA tool out there.
Right, but here's the big question. A framework sounds great in theory, but does it actually hold up in the real world? Well, you bet the researchers put their work to the test.
And this is where that third phase of the research really shines. They surveyed 50 RPA pros who are deep in the trenches, working on automation projects every single day. And these weren't just academics sitting in a lab, right? These were practitioners from all over: finance, healthcare, government, which means the feedback was grounded in real-world practical experience.
The interviews also gave some amazing practical insights. Just listen to this one from an expert. They're not just talking theory, they're explaining exactly why something specific like good workflow organization is so important. It makes things easier to read, easier to reuse, and easier to test. That's pure, on-the-ground wisdom. The survey data was just as powerful. Now, you don't need to be a statistician to get this chart. Just know that in this kind of test, any score above 0.8 is considered really, really good. And I mean, look at that score for GRC, over 0.9. That is huge. It proves that these criteria are solid and that practitioners are totally on the same page about what matters, especially when you're talking about security and compliance.
So the big takeaway from all this testing is pretty clear. Every single one of the 36 sub-criteria that make up this framework was validated by professionals as being critically important. This framework isn't just academic theory, it's a direct reflection of what the industry knows works.
Okay, so let's bring it all home. What does all of this actually mean for you? This brings us to the final and maybe most important part, your automation blueprint. What this research gives us, really, is an incredibly powerful toolkit. It gives you a way to look at RPA tools that goes way beyond the flashy marketing brochures. It's a standard checklist that helps you make smart, evidence-based decisions. And maybe most importantly, it finally builds a solid bridge between academic research and what people actually need in the industry.
At the end of the day, the crucial point is this: we're not flying blind anymore. Thanks to this incredible work, we now have a roadmap, one that's been backed by research and validated by the industry, to stop gambling and start choosing the right digital workers to really move a business forward. And so that just leaves us with one final, kind of provocative thought. The blueprint is here. The criteria are clear. The question isn't how to choose anymore. The real question is, who is going to use this knowledge to build the most efficient, the most secure, and the most innovative automated future? Thanks for joining me.